Welcome to another lesson of endgames you must know from beginner to master, and today, this day finally has arrived. We are going to be taking a look at pawn endings. And let's start with the first position. We know that if we had, let's say, two pawns on the A or H file, on the rook's file, this would be drawn no matter how many pawns white have. While in this case, we have double pawns on B file, and the same would apply to the G file, the knight file. Here, white can actually win the game. So they go king c3, they're trying to get their king to c5, king goes to c7, taking the long distance opposition, king goes to d4, king goes to b6, and now king c4, protecting the pawn and getting the king down to c7. Now king c5 takes the position, king b7, pawn goes to b6. And now there's a trick king a6. Now if king c6 is played, that's a stalemate. So here white can give up a pawn by playing b7. And the thing is that after king b7, king b5, white take their position. And what will happen? They will eventually take, let's say, king a7, king c6, king b8, king b6, and then no matter where this king goes, white will promote the pawn and will win the game. Let's get to the next ending example. Isolated pawns. We have pawn on f4 and h4, and in the following example, king doesn't necessarily have to be involved. I mean, it has to make it easier, but here these pawns cannot be actually taken. It's white to play, of course. King f4 would be a draw. If it was black to play, here white go h5. They're trying to push the pawn to h6. Now if king takes f4, h6, h7, h8, white win the game. So king goes to f6. Now king helps, king goes to b2, king g7, and now to avoid the necessary troubles, let's say king c3, king h6, king d4, king h5, king f5, king g6, king still winning, but we play f5. King h6, now king tries to take the pawn on h5, we go f6, and once again, the king switched the sides, but we still manage to defend both of our pawns. Our king will eventually go to c3, d4, e5, help one of the pawns promote. It is a win. Let's get to the next ending. Blocked pawns, key squares. So sometimes when you have pawn versus pawn endgame, you think it's drawish. And you look at this example, and probably a lot of people would say, oh, how can white actually win this game? And the thing is, they actually can win this game because they have this key squares highlighted, and if king will be able to reach e6, d6, or c6, the game would be just over. So white play king g3, king goes to b7, king f4, king c7, king f5. Now the thing is, black can go king d7, right, to try to tackle the king, but king goes to d5. And now the point is, you saw in the starting position these three highlighted squares, and here, as it turns out, unfortunately, after king d5, the king will eventually reach one of them. King a7, king c6, king c7, king a6, king e8, king d8, king c8, king d6, or king c6. So king goes back, king a6, and now we start chasing the king until we take the pawn on b6. King c8, king d6, king b7, king d7, now king goes to c6, king a7, king 7, and now the game would be just over. White wins this one. Let's get to the next example. This endgame example is crucial to remember. It looks like it's pretty much the same position as in the previous example, but it's slightly different. It's white to play and they can actually draw. So they play f4. Any other move, almost any other move is losing. Let's say if king f2 was played instead, let's say king f2, f4. And now the problem is, king performs the stacking maneuver and eventually pawn promotes, king e2, and then f1 queen. But in the starting position f4, and now it looks like black still have access to these three key squares, but it's not so easy. King e4, king g2, we take the diagonal opposition, so that after king f4, king f2, we take the opposition, and it's actually a draw. King f4, king f2, f4, king f2, f3, king f1, important, not king e1, because king e1 will lose. King f3, king f1, f2, king g2, king e2. So king f1, so that after king f3 comes, we can take the position, and this is a stalemate. Let's get to ending number 81. Let's take a look at the following example. The white's pawn is lost no matter what white are trying to do, but they have to give it up the right way in order to try and actually save the game. And in the following example, if the king goes to g2, then king f4, king takes e4, and this is actually losing for white, as king basically will outflank this one and promote the pawn. In let's say e5, let's try to play e5 after king g2, king f4, e5, it still fails, because now king f5, king f3, king f5, black take that position and win the game. In the starting position, white can play e5 themselves, play immediately. Now king is not on f4 to capture it, so this pawn has to take it. Now king g2, we take that position. King f4, king f2, once again we take that position. Now e4, king e2, and this is a famous draw-in endgame. If king f4, we just take that position once again, and no matter what black do, it is a draw. Let's get to the final position of this lesson. Passed pawns, dual purpose king maneuvers. You're all familiar with the Reti example, which I think I have in my short somewhere. You can go and search it up, or just Google Reti pawn ending, and it will show you. And this is pretty much, it's not necessarily a position like in Reti, but it's has the same idea. So let's first take a look at move like king c4. King c4, white are trying to win here, just to start with. So king g6, b4, king f7, and king eventually gets to the needed square on c8, b8, and then push the pawn, take the pawn b5, it is a draw. Unfortunately, any other moves don't work. Here, king c5 is the winning option. King goes to g6, b4, king f7, and what's the difference? b5, king e7, and now king goes to c6. We're trying to play b6. If king doesn't go to d8 right now, play something like g5, b6, king d8, b7, pawn promote. So king goes to d8, king b7. Now we're trying to basically shoulder the king from our king and then promote the pawn. g5, b6, g4, king a7, g3, b7, and we're one tempo ahead. Just one tempo ahead matters. g2, b8, and of course after king a7, king g3, we'll take the pawn and we'll win the game. This was the first lesson out of 3 rook and pawn endgames lessons. So very important to learn, very important to remember these types of positions, because sometimes what you have to do, you have to evaluate the middle game based on the pawn ending that might occur later in the game. So pawn endgames are significant to your chess understanding, significant in terms of getting the results done. Hope you enjoyed this one. I'll see you in the next lesson next week. Bye bye.